Hey nerds, we are talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi Part V. We are going to give our spoiler-free reviews of the episode and then get into a full spoiler breakdown of the episode, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Nathan.
Hello there.
And I'm
Priya.
Colin.
Hey, so the spoiler-free logline for this episode is Imperial Forces attempt to draw Obi-Wan out. So Priya, what did you think of this episode? Spoiler-free, of course.
I think overall it was decent, a bit clumsy in certain parts. We get some good kind of backstories and flashbacks and kind of previews with what's happening in the episode itself. I think there's some amount of action as well in this episode that is quite satisfactory. So I think overall it's a decent episode, somewhat clumsy in certain areas, and we can get into that when we go into the spoiler free. But overall I think satisfying, but definitely ready for how all of this is going to end next week.
Yeah.
So I think for me, in terms of penultimate episodes, we've seen some stuff from The Mandalorian. We've seen stuff from Boba Fett. I think that for me, it was a little bit of a letdown. There was definitely, as Priya mentioned, that there was some stuff about flashbacks, which is pretty interesting. Some backstory, which is also pretty interesting. But comparatively speaking to the other ones that we've seen in the past, it's not as revealing. It's not as bombastic. It's not like there's anything that's really, oh my gosh, that's going to take me back to it. I think also there's been a lot of talk online about how it has been uneven or it has been bad or something like that. I don't get the sense that it's horrible, but I do get a sense that there is still some things that are not so good. There's some things that are good. I think it was still, like Priya said, I agree with her in that it's pretty decent, but it's not like anything that's wow, mind-blowing, because we've had this talk, Nathan, with the previous, I think with Boba Fett, that there was, oh my gosh, there's some really great things here going on, and this is really my favorite, and stuff like that, but I didn't really get the sense that was the case here with this penultimate episode of Obi-Wan.
I think I liked it a little bit better than you did, Colin, but it's not like a 10 out of 10. There's still some issues that we'll probably get into when we talk about it in the spoiler breakdown. I think we give it a solid 8. There are some, like I said, some issues. I think more things actually happened in this episode than in the previous episode, which was frustrating me a little bit because it's, as I said last week, aside from some highlights in the previous episode, if those highlights didn't exist, I would have given the last episode like a 6. So we get highlights in this episode, plus we get actual plot developments in this episode, which is why I bump it up and give it an 8. But there were some clunky things around the edges that we can discuss which is why it's not like a perfect episode. I like the framing device that they use in this episode. We can talk about the specifics of that framing device later on, but it showed me something that I was hoping for since the beginning of the season. So I like the framing device that they used in the episode. Like I said, there were some developments with Reva. There's developments a little bit with the Obi-Wan Darth Vader plot. Leia really doesn't have anything to do in this episode, and we can get to the specifics there a little bit when we get into the breakdown. But she doesn't really have a lot to do in this episode. She's mostly just there, or she has a side quest that takes way longer than it should naturally actually take. So there's like probably one of the things that was a little weird. Indira Varma, I think, who plays Tala, she does a good job in this episode as well. So yeah, for me it's an 8. It's definitely probably one of the better episodes of the season. I wrestle with whether or not it's better than. I think it might be better than 3 for me in places. I forget what I gave 3. I think maybe I gave 3 a 7.5. But yeah, it was good. It was a good episode. Yeah. So, what do you guys think? Any other thoughts? Or do you want to get into the breakdown?
We'll just get into breakdowns, I think, because it will be too much revealing if we move forward from here without it. Yeah.
Spoiler time.
Yeah.
All right, so I will say, before we get into spoilers, if you are enjoying the conversation, if you appreciate the content, please subscribe. We really appreciate it. It helps us grow the channel. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the summer, so we can give you more diverse points of view. So, without further ado, let's get into spoilers. Spoilers ahead. Go see the episode. It's a good episode. You can't understand the finale without this episode. So, all right. So where do you guys want to go? Do you want to go in chronological order, or do you want to jump around? Because I mean, we can get to the big reveal in the middle of the episode, which is what's up with Reva, which is good because we've been trying to figure out for the longest time what's up with Reva, and we finally get that information.
I'm just going to say 10 points to Nerd Social to call that one like episode 1.
Yeah.
We were like, how does Reva know his name is Anakin? And is she one of the kids from the Order 66? So I was like, yep, we called it. I know that was like supposed to be a shock factor, and I get that, but I think most people probably knew that was coming. But there were still some tantalizing tidbits, I think, from that. Even though I think it was slightly clumsy the way they showed that it was so fast. Yeah. Like, we've been waiting for 5 episodes. And then it was just like, boom. And then, okay, there's Reva's backstory. So I thought it was a little clumsy and could have been dragged out a little bit, even though a lot of us knew it was coming. But yeah, at least we finally got that resolution. So I was happy to see that. And I think what you were saying with the beginning, or that flashback framing, I think just really set the tone of the episode really well, because they were going back and forth of these 2 men that were at the pseudo their prime as Jedis, and now they're like shallow versions of themselves. But it's still at their core, I guess they're still very human beings. So I thought that was a very interesting framing. And just the last point is, I was like, this is episode 5, and it reminds me of episode 5 because of Hoth. Last week was episode 4, and it reminded me of
I think maybe they're doing that on
4.
purpose with the siege. Yeah, I think they're doing it on purpose like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So next week's going to be all about the Return of the Jedi, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of sieges in Star Wars that I'm thinking about it. There was one in The Last Jedi as well. I think there's one in, what's the one that comes before A New Hope, or the one that they did recently? I forget. Rogue One. Wasn't there like a siege kind of thing in that one as well?
Yeah.
I believe someone Scarab, you were saying? Like, not before Scarab, but the other one, the Jeddah, was, because they had a Death Star basically destroy Jeddah, that planet that was there. Yeah, it was kind of like that in some ways. But going back to what you're saying with the reveal of Reva, I think that I built up too much expectation on that. And because you did mention last week about how there should be more of a backstory about Reva, and they should just flesh it out a little bit more. Because I've said this in previous reviews, is that she's a very compelling character. She is headstrong. She's just as pure, ruthless as Darth Vader. And it'll be interesting to see that progression as to how the heck does she become an Inquisitor. And so they just brush through it too quickly for me. So I'm like, yeah, that's great. I like it. But I just wish that there's more of that. And I think that could have brought in Hayden Christensen a lot more, because a lot of people are like, what is he doing? There was one thing online where there was like, I don't know how, one of the nerd Facebook groups, someone posted something about how there's a stunt guy who does like Vader sitting, stunt guy who does Vader that is like walking, and Little Jones does the voice. So what does Hayden Christensen do? So Hayden Christensen, so they were saying like Hayden Christensen probably does the body makeup, like when he's in the back to tank, most likely. So I just thought that was a missed opportunity to show Hayden. I mean, yes, we will talk about another scene where Hayden did show up, but that was also another scene where Hayden could have been shown a lot more to kind of.
You see him for a second. You see him for a second in that.
Yeah, you do. But I think there could have been a lot.
Yeah, and you're talking about the scene where she's flashing back. Yeah, given how they staged the framing device, and they spent so much time on the framing device, and we cutting back and forth to the framing device, I was expecting a cutaway similar to that. But I understand why they did it this way, because they were having the conversation, and they were flashing back and forth to her memories in the middle of the conversation. But they could have done a full cutaway. We necessarily. And not only they could have done a full cutaway, they could have done a full cutaway to what happened with Hayden, and then what happened with her after she was playing possum, right?
Yeah.
That would have been more satisfying. That would have been more satisfying, because what happens to her at the end of this episode is what happened to her as a child. She got stabbed in the stomach. She just survived it somehow. So seeing how she survived it, and all she had to go through to survive it, because she says I've survived worse, like why is she so bitter, why is she so angry, would have, I think, been a bit more satisfying, because she is the other lead. It's not a two-hander, it's like a three-hander. She's the other lead in the show, so it would have been good to see exactly how she was found in the gutter, as the Inquisitor said, how she survived.
Yeah, I think it's just relying so much on exposition as well, because Obi-Wan's, you're hunting Vader. He got to that real quick. And it just would have been nice that you both were saying just to flesh that out a little bit more, and maybe they will in the next episode, although I think they're going to be trying to do a lot in the next episode, because it's the last one. Maybe if they do season 2. And I think the other thing with this, it's a classic Star Wars story. It's known characters. We know how it's going to end for Obi-Wan and Vader, because we know episode is coming. Reva's an open book, because obviously she doesn't show up in the later episodes. That's not to say that her story ends, but I think they have the chance here to really make this like a really compelling story, and it felt a little bit flat. We knew it was coming, but I just don't think they gave enough to really give her that time.
They definitely should have. I'm not going to say they did her dirty. If they didn't explain it at all, then they would have done her dirty. But I think they could have done better, since she was so prominent. She's such a prominent part of pulling Obi-Wan out. It was her, as the Inquisitor, them using her rage. They basically used her rage to find Obi-Wan, also to destroy the Path. So even though they got away, this route is gone now. The Path can't use it anymore, and that's all because they played against her rage. So explaining that a little bit more, using more screen time to actually dig into that. So she says here they were the only family I knew. But if she said a little bit more about why she's upset with Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan says that we want the same thing. And she said, do we, Obi-Wan, do you really want to kill Anakin? Because he could have killed Anakin when he had the chance.
I love that she's like,
you don't want to kill him. You don't want to kill him. And the other thing is here, she said that you could have saved me, but she also, another line could have been added here, because she has not just hate for Obi-Wan, she has hate for all Jedi, she also could have added here that none of the Jedi came to save her. So that they were going to do this exposition, they could have given her a couple more lines here. This wasn't terrible. It just was less than we should have gotten.
It was just flat.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, they give you small teasers, and even in the beginning when she's talking with Vader on the bridge, she's, we need to break them, and they're not the ones we need to break. And he obviously has a single-mindedness with Obi-Wan, but she wants to destroy, like, the whole hope around Jedis in the past. So you get those seeds, but I just think with this whole exposition, it felt a little bit flat. I do think they did her great with the duel with Vader at the end. That was probably the better
Especially
duel
since, she can't win.
So
it was still a good set piece,
Yeah. It was a really cool set piece. And of course, she's the one that finds the communicator, of course. She's like completely impaled, but she still like falls right next to the communicator and is probably going to end up at Tatooine.
So Priya, that resolves our issue from the first or second episode.
Oh, yes.
The communicator's broken.
Yes, I said that too.
The communicator's broken. So that's why I can't just call him up, because the communicator's broken and it's in Reva's hand. So good. That was a little bit annoying, and I know at some point they had to break it. So they did. Okay. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think Bail Organa's message is probably like the most indiscreet.
Tatooine, tell where I'm going. I'm gonna. Yeah, it's not great. Yeah.
Come on, that was like, oh, have you told him about the kids? And I need to go save Luke. And
does he say Luke? I think he just says the boy. But
the boy. Yeah.
He says the boy, but then he says Ben. So it's like there's probably so many farmers named Ben. But I digress. I was just like, lay it all on the platter, like a convenient plot device. I haven't heard from you, so I'm just gonna tell you all the secrets in case somebody.
Yeah, so we've been going back and forth, but I do, like I said, I did like the framing device of the Coruscant scenes between Anakin and Obi-Wan. They didn't de-age Hayden Christensen, so he looks different.
They did not. Which is
I don't know, this is fine.
But they gave him the same terrible hairstyle. So.
This is a very extended scene, and it probably would have cost a lot of money, and also it would have maybe taken you out of the scene if they tried to de-age both of them, because if they de-aged him, they would have had to de-age Ewan McGregor, even though Ewan McGregor doesn't look that much older. So what they did is they put dye in Ewan McGregor's beard to make it look shinier, and they gave him the Padawan little braid or whatever.
Yeah, so I do have something to say about this scene, because I think that I'm okay with them having this duel, but it slightly undercuts a little bit of the Clone Wars. Because there was a cut scene at the very end where, at the very end of this fight, because they kept cutting it back and forth to this fight, at the very end, Obi-Wan said something about how there was something about his undoing, about Anakin's undoing, and then it cuts right to Vader. And I'm like, wait a second. Is he still carrying that as he matured? So it's kind of like a little bit of a slight undercut, so that's why I was like a little bit...
The way they cut this, it starts at Coruscant, and then when they cut to present day, the first person is Vader, so it's him thinking about it. Yeah, but I think that it took me aback, because I'm like, why would he think about that part instead of think about some other type of happening that might happen during the Clone Wars, or even in Episode 3 is kind of a little weird, but like, why go back to that point in time? He could go back to the Mustafar fight, but we saw the Mustafar fight already. Yeah. And I think the point of this was just trying to show that he was always trying to prove himself. And I think the point of this was, he had this lesson from his master. He didn't really listen to his master. He never really listened to his master. And right after this, because this is just before the beginning of Clone Wars, he gets his hand cut off when he just charges in and tries to take out Dooku. So he got this lesson. He lost, and he didn't take any of it on. He didn't take any of it on board, which is why he lost his hand at the beginning.
And now I think he wants to prove Obi-Wan wrong, because you can even see, and I'm so glad that they finally had Hayden Christensen as Anakin, because we were waiting for that as well. And you could tell, I think, like, he did a lot more nuance with like his facial expressions when Obi-Wan was telling him what he was doing was wrong. You could tell he was like defeated and upset, because he just wants that.
Yeah, he thought he was
recognition.
going to have that victory. He thought he was going to be told that he's great, or he's going to be a master. But yeah.
So I think he just wants to completely prove Obi-Wan wrong now, to actually show him that his tactics are going to make him like powerful and victorious. So I think, definitely get your point, Colin. Like, why would he be thinking about this fight in particular? But obviously,
it's a framing device.
As a framing device, it is.
Because you also get some cutbacks to Obi-Wan thinking about how to get around this issue, because they're under siege, and he thinks about that fight, and he thinks about the fact that Anakin is just going to charge in, because that's what Anakin does, and that's why he was thinking back to this. So that they're thinking about it for different reasons. And that's why I think it was a good framing device.
Sure. I think I'm less convinced because of the fact that it's like at an era where he still views himself as a Padawan. But like I said, when you watch the Clone Wars, you see a lot of the maturation of Anakin.
He was never a master. He was a Padawan, even though he was put on the council.
Oh yeah, that's true. But at the same time,
very specifically, Windu said that we don't grant you.
Yeah, I know, but I think that it undercuts a little bit of. I just think that just having watched the Clone Wars, I think it undercuts it a little bit because of the fact that there is still a growth process and maturation process that happened during the time in which he was a general during the Clone Wars.
Oh, when you said sorry, you kept saying Clone Wars, and I'm thinking of the movie.
About Clone Wars,
you're talking about the show.
Yeah.
Yes, yes and no.
I'm saying.
Yes, I think there was definitely some growth from the time when he had got this lesson, got his hand cut off, and he became a general in the Clone Wars, even though he was a Padawan, which is interesting. So
was like
she was a Padawan too, and she was a general. Yeah. Basically, anyone who was a Jedi was a general. So, yes, I understand what you're saying, but this core lesson, whereas he did get back, he probably could have lasted that fight longer at the end of the Clone Wars. You still see that he didn't learn that lesson because he still went in with rage, because we saw what happened at the end of Revenge of the Sith, right? We saw so I don't think anything that happens in the Clone Wars is negated by what happens in Revenge of the Sith, because he's corrupted by the dark side, and he's still rageful, and he's still like going in all guns blazing, like instead of actually thinking through how to resolve the issue. So I think even though he does grow within the Clone Wars show, that key flaw is still there. You see it before?
I see your point. Yeah. But maybe because maybe because I just saw it from the standpoint of he did mature, he did grow through it. And yes, there was a fatal flaw. And when we go to episode 3, there's still definitely a fatal flaw that's there. But at the same time,
I think he gets more skilled during the Clone Wars. Like, he gets more skilled so that even though he has that flaw, it doesn't hinder him in most situations, because he tends to be more skilled than most of the people that he's going up against. But he's definitely still jumping out of helicarriers, jumping out of moving objects, like jumping for he's always guns a-blazing all throughout Clone Wars. He's just better at it because he's always in battle. But
I don't want to spoil it for Priya because she hasn't gotten to it yet, but there was one scene where it really showed a lot of, and it stuck with me, showed the maturation process of Anakin. Mm-hmm. So I think I kept going back to that scene as I was watching this, and I'm like, he did evolve a little bit. It's not like and I don't know why they didn't choose to do something that wasn't when he was still considered a Padawan in the episode 2 phase, more so if it wasn't during the Clone Wars cartoon series when he had the longer hair and he's got the scar. He's a little bit more mature. I wonder why they chose.
I think it's probably cheaper than trying to do something on the battlefield. And know that after the Clone Wars actually started, they would have had a whole lot of time to be doing sparring matches. They were all in the muck of it.
Yeah,
so,
but I wonder if they could have framed it in a different way during a Clone Wars battle, or during. I think there was the Clone Wars that was now Legends. It's not canon anymore. Where I think both of them were hunkered down. Mm-hmm. This is from the guy who did Samurai Jack, and so this is the 3-minute shorts that they used to have in the Clone Wars, which is not, like I said, it's not considered canon anymore. But they showed this nice scene where they were like under siege, actually, like World War I style, and they were like sitting there for like months at a time trying to break the separate. I think that one, I was like, that shows some great interaction. I wonder if they could have done something like that in live action.
I see what you're saying. I think that
we might be asking too much.
No. It's possible they could. I could see what he's saying working. I understand why they made the decision that they made. I think you could probably communicate the same thing and just have them like hunkered down because when you first started, I was like, in the middle of the battlefield, there's a lot of other stuff going around, and it's too distracting from the two men that we're supposed to be focusing on.
Sure.
But if they're hunkered down and they're together, and there's just a talking scene between the two of them, and Anakin wants to go in guns a-blazing or whatever, and he tries and that fails, and he's shown through that interaction that there are other ways to fight, Obi-Wan says in this episode. Yeah, that could have worked, but I feel like they made a couple of decisions, like... I think they bet on the fact that most of the audience wanted to see them fight again, like actual fight again. So that's probably the decision that they made. Like, they could have done a quieter scene on the battlefield, but there would have been a lot of people complaining about them not fighting, because I don't think they're going to fight in the next episode, because the whole point of the arc is there are other ways to fight. So I don't think we're going to see them fight again in the next episode. So they had to put the fight in this episode. So I think that's probably why they decided to do that.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I also got that suspicion that they're not going to show anything else in terms of between Vader and Obi-Wan. And then I think we'll probably get Reva again, because you were saying they didn't do her dirty. I
thought he was going to come back and help her. He just left.
Me too.
Yeah, everyone's manipulating her.
Like pretty much the same thing.
Everyone's manipulating her. Yeah.
So I was like, disappointed in Obi-Wan there. I really thought like he was going to pull out from the back.
Everyone's using her rage against her. Like, the Grand Inquisitor is, Darth Vader is, Obi-Wan is. They know that she's like tunnel visioned on her goal, and they're using her rage for different reasons. Yeah. But and even Darth says Obi-Wan was wise to use you against me. So,
he probably just made her like even more angry now. But I do think it's a very interesting parallel. Like you guys were just discussing, it's an interesting parallel of Reva's rage and
Yeah.
single-mindedness with Vader, because it's almost like she's a shadow of him, where she obviously is hell-bent on revenge, and I do see strong parallels between the both of them. I see what you're saying, because I have now started a little bit of the Clone Wars series, so I get it. Like, they do show Anakin progressing as a character, and his kind of, his growth is very evident through the show, and I've only gone through a little bit of season 1, and it's evident, so I definitely get what you're saying, but I think a lot of that framing was because Hayden Christensen's coming back the first time since the prequels, and so I think they wanted to fall back to that episode 2 flashback between the two of them. I think it was more because fans.
Yeah, I can imagine earlier drafts of this episode where they were maybe in a foxhole and they were just talking to each other, but then they decided, we can't do that because people will be upset. So they could have achieved the exact same thing, like you said, like behind enemy lines and just being bombarded, and Anakin wanting to rush in and Obi-Wan telling him not to, but
there could be another scene like that though. There could be. I think for me, I think that having that type of interaction while in live action like I said, there could be an opportunity of that in the next episode. But I think that showing that homage to the animated series, using it in live action, I think that would enhance it a little bit for me.
Yeah,
because of what has just to acknowledge the fact that there was some type of growth and that there was some type of evolution, and also the sadness behind. Yes, we know about all the sadness and stuff, but also the more tender moments between them two, in terms of their relationship. But of course, it's going to be totally gone because he's now a Vader. But at the same time, I think that it would have been nice if they acknowledged that. That's all.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It would have been cool to see him in the. I guess you do see him in the changed Jedi robe, because you see him in the darker robes in like Revenge of the Sith. But that's what he mostly wears throughout the Clone Wars. So seeing him in a scene like that, where he's a little bit more mature, would have been cool. But I see what you're saying. It lets on to people who watch the Clone Wars a little bit. But like I said, I think they had to balance this out over like the majority of people, and the majority of people, after they are watching the show, have seen the prequels and the originals, but not necessarily the Clone Wars. And the majority of people would have been annoyed by some random scene in a foxhole. That would have been fine. It would have been fine, and it would have worked just as well, as opposed to an actual duel.
Yeah, but it added the drama with the lightsabers, right? That's what I'm going for, is like the drama in the show. So maybe in the next, I like the flashback usage, to be honest, because they didn't like overly use it, and it was a nice way to kind of frame it without taking away from moving like the current plot. So I'm hoping they use a little bit more of that in the next episode too. So maybe they'll do that. I think the siege itself
went on too long. It was weird.
A bit, and it also seemed like nobody was capable of making decisions in a way.
The whole Reva story, like I said, it has some good beats, but like her becoming Grand Inquisitor here at the very beginning, when she thinks that she's going to, I think, reprimanded or whatever when he says kneel, knowing what her goal is. Now, maybe she thought that he caught on to her, and I guess he did catch on to her, but this is all part of his game. So he says kneel and then he says Grand Inquisitor, which shocks her. So she thinks that she's closer to her goal. But like later on, her at the siege, she goes down. He sends her down to take the facility, and she orders them to blast the door. But she has this heart-to-heart with Obi-Wan, and then just opens the door with a lightsaber. Like, why didn't she do that earlier?
And then with Roken's character as well, O'Shea Jackson, he was like, I'm just going to try and push this button until it works.
Yeah, so why do you have a facility that you can't do maintenance on? Like, you can't access it all? Like, you have to send little children in there? That seems like a design flaw.
Yes, you have to have little children in there. You have to have...
And the only way to get out is through the hatch in the ceiling. It just seemed like, that's why I was like, nobody seemed capable of making decisions, because everyone was just like waiting around for Obi-Wan to do his thing. And then it's also, if your entire plan was to wait until the roof opened, get on the ship and wait there.
It's even with the switch at the end where they switched out to the other ship. If everyone was on the ship, it would have been easier for them to get from one ship to the other ship. It's like, everyone, I understand for staging purposes, having everyone just huddled inside the ship might have been more difficult to shoot instead of just like in the open space. But it doesn't make sense given the plot that they are all milling around. They should probably just get ready. They should be getting ready to go. So, yeah.
They are refugees. Exactly. They are refugees, and they have to show that kind of refugee moment in order for them to get that dramatic effect from the audience. So that's why they just didn't want to show them on the ship. Although you could have shown like refugee moments on a ship. People have done that before. Thor Ragnarok comes to mind.
What did you think about this? The way she delivered this line took me out of it a little bit. She yelled it and screeched it, like, light him up. And it makes sense to me at the end when they say that she's always enraged. But like in the moment, it was like, wow, that's an interesting tone to take, or interesting way to go. So yeah, this makes no sense. Like, are they saying that her lightsaber wasn't long enough until they made some holes in the door? I don't understand.
It was It definitely was weird. But I will say the thing, even after all this time, just and as incompetent as stormtroopers are, it's just such an effective visual to have.
Although
Like it still is
so they're not
intimidating.
that incompetent.
But the ratio
Yeah,
is
yeah,
still like
sure.
10-1 probably.
Yeah.
But I think that was effective. And we were saying earlier, like Leia doesn't really have much of a role. She's pretty much crawled in that space for most of, pretty much like 90% of the episode. I think she's like hanging out with those wires. But yeah, I think the siege thing, I think it did go a little bit too long. And then right after the still you have right now, right after this, Tala shows up and conveniently shares her backstory, which is foreshadowing that she's probably about exactly what happens. I was reading that initially they wanted Tala and Obi-Wan to have this weird love story thing, which I'm glad they didn't go down that route.
Because again, that will severely undercut stuff that happened in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to happen.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to spoil it any more further than that.
It also goes against the Jedi code.
True. However, that whole thing has really made me very confused at times about how they treat love. It's just
that's part of the reason.
Oh yeah.
Attachment love for me is just okay. Yeah, it's like you can't have kids. Like you're not allowed to have kids.
Pretty much part of the reason.
Yeah, it's also the reason the Jedi lose because they're so strict about this. Like they can't bend. I was listening or reading something recently. There apparently in this era are Jedi who exist who don't adhere to that, like that aren't at the temple.
Yeah,
like, have a more pliable code. We haven't seen them in any of the media that they've produced, but apparently there's supposed to be some other Jedi's elsewhere that aren't part of this order. And also, if you go back to the Republic time, they didn't have these strict like codes around like loving or attachment or whatever. It seems like every time a Jedi order comes up, they overlearn something, like they overcorrect rather. I think that the attachment thing came from their situation with the Sith in the Old Republic, and they had attachment. They overcorrected to say no attachment, and that was probably too far because it caused other issues. Because Anakin wouldn't have had his issues if he could. Yeah,
it's a very Padme.
Yeah, and I think that for me, it's a very weird thing because it's almost like we talked about how Obi-Wan was taken away from his family as a child. And I'm like, so basically the Jedi are just like kidnappers, pretty much. They just kidnap other people's kids, and then because they are force sensitive, so they just kidnap. Is that how they recruit? I mean, it's kind of shady.
I think people are giving their kids up willingly, but it's not. It's weird. Yeah. Though. You got to imagine that there's a lot of people that say no, I'm not going to give you my child. So that's probably. I got to imagine there's a lot of people.
And the thing is, you see it in episode 1, right, where Anakin's mother doesn't like. That's the only choice she can give to Anakin because they're slaves.
Sure.
And so. I agree with you, Colin. It disturbs me as well, like when you actually get into the psyche of the Jedi with how the fact that they kind of were like, Anakin's too old. And I'm like, he's a child. You're separating them from his mother, pretty much uprooted his entire existence, and now you're trying to, be like, he's not.
Too much of a attachment. He's a 9-year-old instead of a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, Yoda is a kidnapper. Oh no, God, that's cringy as heck. Sorry. Sorry to bring it up but it is kind of cringy because it's like basically if you are force sensitive or I think Tala actually had that story about why she switched sides about like the fact that there were some adults that basically like the battalion murdered that were also force sensitive. So I'm thinking those adults that were force sensitive were never discovered by the Jedi at the time. So it's just like. So they're just selectively choosing.
As I said, not every parent is going to give their child up. That's probably why there aren't that many Jedi. That's why 20 years after the Revenge of the Sith, they seem like a myth. That's probably why also every Jedi, even if they were a Padawan, became a general because there weren't that many of them. Because not most parents are going to say, "No, you cannot have my child." So there are very few. There are very few of them who actually are going to go.
Or they were.
Or they were too old by the time they realized that they were force sensitive. So like Anakin was too old at 9. So I think that if you're looking at the age that they showed in the Clone Wars when the Sith actually were stealing children. Because, like I said, I don't think the Jedi actually stole children. I think they just went to people. The age were basically like babies, or a year or two old. So I don't know a lot of people are going to give up their baby or their 2-year-old. Yeah. So I think there are just a lot of force-sensitive people out there who aren't trained. Anyway, did we miss? Oh, yeah, we didn't actually talk about the duel at the end. So we actually go there. That's probably one of the best parts of the episode. Even though, like I said, there's some clunkier things. Like I can go to the hallway fight here. You can see the droid. I forget what is his name. He goes out, unfortunately, and then Tala goes out. What also I found a little hokey was the way that Obi-Wan was like blocking the blaster. He kept like jumping up on one leg, and it was a little hokey. It was a little. You can see it there. It was a little hokey the way that he was. I feel like every time I saw him blocking laser fire in the prequels, he was more planted on the ground. It was a little weird. Anyway, so yeah, she decides to. Ned B dies, and not really saving her, but like blocking shots, and then she decides to blow herself, sacrifice herself.
Star Wars trope, sacrificing for the greater good. so many times already.
Yeah, and and her last words are "May the Force be with you." I didn't see how. Did you guys see how she closed the door? Did she like shoot it? Because that's how you shoot all. That's how you close all the doors in Star Wars. You shoot.
Yes,
shoot
Star Wars. Yes, exactly.
Just to shoot the remote. Just shoot the panel.
Randomly close the door. Randomly just close the door.
Close the door or open the
door.
That's what you need to do. You need to shoot it, to open it, or close it.
Yeah, actually, one thing we forgot to mention with the siege thing, which Nathan, you and I talked about, was obviously Haja.
Yeah, we didn't see he didn't do anything either, really, in this episode. He did even less than Leia in this episode. He was just, but he did drop his things. So that's his contribution to this episode.
But I think for him, I think Kumail and Nanjiani was just basically just so excited to be, hey, you want to be in Star Wars? Like, great, I'm in Star Wars, and also I'm gonna be in MCU. Great, I'm just gonna do it, without like hesitation whatsoever.
But I think that for both of these people are movie stars. I think they're both gonna show up in Andor. Like they're getting on this rebel ship. Andor has a lot of episodes. I think they have 20-something episodes. They're gonna both show up on that show, so that they're just introduced in this show.
That's a good point, because I think people were hoping Tala was going to show up there too.
No,
she obviously won't, and maybe Ned B might survive because he's a droid. But I think that's a good point about discontinuing and with the rebels and the path.
The path will mutate into the Rebel Alliance based upon the experiences here, and these two guys will probably be two integral parts of the Rebel Alliance later on. Because, like I said, they're both movie stars, and they could do other things. That's why.
Do you think the Grand Inquisitor will show up there too? Because again, we called it episode 1 that he wasn't really
honestly,
dead.
If you see Rebels, he shows up in Rebels, and Rebels is like close to a New Hope, so he couldn't be dead. And then if you read online, his species has 2 stomachs, so she just stabbed him in one of his stomachs. And it'd be interesting. She's supposed to be human. I'm not sure how she survived stab wounds to the stomach, unless the first stab wound is the one that she survived, and now she just has machinery down there. So Vader stabbing her at the end of this episode was just stabbing through machinery.
Yeah, so it makes Qui-Gon's death weird because it's totally weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Weird out.
Who we still haven't seen, by the way.
I forgot about that. We definitely will see him probably in the next episode. We're talking about a season 2, which is fine. They probably need to do a couple.
Yeah, I have a prediction that he's probably going to show up at the very end. That's going to be the big reveal.
Yeah,
that's going to be the big reveal. And then I'm going to take you down that path to enlightenment.
You can already see him getting.
So then he's gonna be all wise and stuff, and then you're gonna see him in all his full glory is because of his training in the Netherworld.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can already see him going down that path. Like the decision in this episode not to fight Anakin straight on, to go a different way, as he says, there's other ways to fight. That's the sort of the Obi-Wan that you see in A New Hope. Other ways to fight. Sure. So yeah.
I think he even says something similar to that line of like, there's other ways of fighting. And it reminded me of when Yoda says like, wars do not make one great. So I think it's just like the Jedi that survived have shifted their thinking. But I will say, since you're on that scene, Nathan, like, seeing Vader on the bridge of the Star Destroyer, that was so cool, just because that's one of the opening shots I think that you see of him, period, in 1977. Yeah. So it was just a really cool.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I thought it was really cool. And then the fight scene at the end, it's like, I don't think we've ever seen, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe in the cartoons, but that level of
we saw Rey kind of do something like that, but she had to use more effort, and I don't think the ship was as big. But
when she thought that she killed Chewie, she kind of pulled that. But even like his fight with Reva, he was like force blocking, and it was amazing. Yeah, and I think that was a good parallel, like seeing Anakin in his like Padawan Jedi, and now see Vader in full force. I thought that was cool, but I love that fight scene, and I like that they gave Reva a longer kind of lightsaber duel, so it could show up for
also double lightsaber made an appearance as well.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And I think all the Inquisitors have double lightsabers like that, and they all spin like that. But yeah, he's mostly just toying with her. He's mostly toying. He doesn't even use his lightsaber. He just uses part of her lightsaber in the battle. So yeah, he does it with far more like ease than Rey did. Yeah, and he just slams it down on the ground. Yeah, it's definitely a cool scene. Which is this whole sequence leading up to Reva is what bumps this up to an 8 for me. Because when it happened, even though I've seen similar things other places, it just looked cool. You thought they were gone. He was like, nope.
Yeah. It's the other ship. Oh no. Bamboozled. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just, although the way that they stage it, you don't really see another ship. I guess this might be back there in the dust. Maybe.
I was trying to look too. I'm like, where'd that other ship come from? Because the shot, the way they did it was also like when the Falcon kind of just gets away from him. So that's why I was like, oh whoa, he caught it, which was cool. But yeah, I didn't see the other ship. And obviously,
the way that he Rage pulls, like, it's not even like panels, like giant chunks out of the ship. Yeah. So yeah, and then he misses because he's focused on people there. He misses the actual takeoff. So yeah, which again, like I said, I think this framing device is useful because you go to other parts of the actual fight where he made similar mistakes, where he was charging in. Yeah, it was charging in, and then Obi-Wan says that until you learn this, until you overcome it, Padawan, you will still be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the whole Weaver fight, gets a lot to do here. She gets to jump around and move around and everything, and actually use the twirling part of this lightsaber. But yeah, she's no match for him. He slows it down. He breaks it in half. He gives her what she thought she wanted, and it ended the way that he knew it was always going to end, because we find out that he's been playing her the whole time. So
Yep.
It's like the Star Killer character from the video game, from the Force Unleashed video game. It's very similar to that.
Yeah, I hear someone was...
The story's kind of like that.
Yeah, someone was telling me that you get stronger in that game, but you feel like you're getting better and better, and then you actually meet Vader, and he shows you that you haven't learned anything. Like, he smacks you down very easily. So yeah, it's probably something very similar to that. So yeah, she gets stabbed in the stomach again.
I know. Hey, if she's going to Tatooine, we already know from Boba Fett that's where you get, like, the mechanics.
If she got stabbed the first time, she probably did.
As a child.
Yeah. But then surely, like, Vader and the Grand Inquisitor must know that.
Probably won't.
I guess they know because he even says it. He says the line, "Rage can make you survive," and then they talk about all the rage she has. So I'm like, I guess they're intending for her to survive.
I don't know. The sense that I get is that they expect her to die, or they don't really care. They're just putting her back in the gun. Yeah. She had this exalted position, or she thought that she had this exalted position, but they were just playing her the whole time. So yeah, the end of this episode also doesn't necessarily make sense to me. So this guy, I forget, Roken says that their drive is out and they're being chased. And Anakin is, it's not Anakin, I keep saying Anakin instead of Obi-Wan is focused on the message. Then his attention goes to the boy a little bit, but they still have the issue of them being chased by the Star Destroyer and not having a drive. So I feel like him saying everything is fine makes no sense whatsoever here, because everything. He should have said
I have a bad feeling about this.
Yeah, it's like his last words here. I'm sure it's nothing. Makes no sense because we're being chased. There's an issue here. So I don't know. The way that it ended was a little weird. I understand that it was supposed to be him feeling through the Force that the boy is in trouble, but within the context of the scene, I feel like there's some more immediate danger to like him and Leia because they're still being chased by the Star Destroyer. But whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how it pans out. Obviously, like, we know from episode 4 that Vader doesn't know about Luke at Tatooine, so I'm guessing they're just going to keep that contained with Reva.
I don't think he's going to go to Tatooine.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be Reva probably showing up in Tatooine. I still love they don't do this kind of 360 with her and make her, because I had echoes of that when Obi-Wan was trying to appeal to her. It reminded me when Luke was appealing to Vader in episode 6, where he was like, I can sense there's good in you kind of thing, and I was like, to me it'll cheapen her whole arc to like suddenly make her see the light because she's just been through so much pain.
You don't think she can be redeemed?
I'm curious to kind of see. I'm not saying she can. I think she probably is redeemable. I'm just saying if they want to, it could also be a really like different type of Star Wars story if she was that fine line between the Sith and Jedi, where she's tormented by both sides, which Anakin did, but then he just went full out Sith. I think for her to struggle with that, I think that would be a really interesting character building for her instead of just making her pick one side.
There's definitely characters that you'll see in the cartoons that does do that, but I think that if you're going to do that, you're not going to go full on redemption. It just doesn't make any sense, and you're right, Priya, it cheapens the story. And I think that what's probably going to come to play is that, yes, I think she's going to go to Tatooine. There's going to be some type of revelation where she's just going to give up, but she's not going to be like full on, I'm redeemed anymore and I'm going to join the rebel. No, I think that's just going to be on her own.
I think it's better if she keep her gray.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, she's going to be on her own. You might see her pop up somewhere where if it benefits her, she's gonna go with it wherever, what side it is benefits her, she herself, and that will be that she already said that a couple of times in the show, like wherever's gonna benefit me, I'm gonna follow. So I think that's gonna be that type of role for her moving forward. Whatever property she shows up later on, she might end up saving a rebel member, or she might end up don't cross my path again. I will kill you the next time. Something like along those lines where she's been burned by both sides, and it's not, but she's very jaded, and just leave me alone. Maybe she become a bounty hunter. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah. So yeah, any other thoughts about this episode before we wrap up? I mean, I think I'm not sure. I think we definitely will get Qui-Gon in the next episode. I'm not sure how.
I think so too.
I don't know how they're going to resolve Reva. Hopefully, like you said, they don't give her a complete redemption arc. Although I guess they could do that over the course of more than one season if they wanted to do that. If she shows up in the next season, but she's definitely going to come to Tatooine and try to cause some ruckus. So I don't know how he's going to talk her down. If he's going to fight with her, because she has a reason to be mad with him. Because like you said, Priya, he definitely used her.
And she also she already has encountered Owen. If you remember back in way back in part one.
Those who Owen she knows who Owen. So
Yes.
I forgot about that. She met Owen. She knows Owen. She knows exactly who to go to. So she'll be waiting for Obi-Wan when he gets there.
Yeah. After she gets her stomach fixed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one thing I will end on is, like I was saying before, this is a saga of characters we know, and it's something Star Wars does well. Like, it's a big galaxy, but somehow they keep the stories pretty small, because even this story, it's about Obi-Wan, Vader, and Reva, and there's a lot of side plots, but they give that sense of a really small storytelling, even though it's a giant galaxy. This is a Star Wars formula we know, so I think we got some news this week about what Titi, I think he's doing. He wants to do something different with Star Wars, so I'm excited to see how he will unpack some of that, and because we don't need the same characters, and we don't need another Skywalker or another Palpatine, so I'll be curious, because I think Andor will also rely on some ties to the episode, so I'm curious to see what direction.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have Jimmy Smits back as Bail. Maybe they'll show some Leia here and there, maybe. But
I think that they'll have freer reign there. Like similar to the Rogue One, they had there isn't a whole lot about how the Rebel Alliance was built up. So they'll have freer reign there, and Luke doesn't show up until he's an adult. They probably won't make the mistake of bringing Han Solo in, because he's supposed to be like a terrible person at this point until like he meets up with Luke and Obi-Wan. So I think they won't use the legacy stuff is much of a crutch, which is what made Rogue One a really good movie, because it didn't have a whole lot of tie-ins. It definitely had Vader in it, but it had a bunch of original ideas. Going back to the Taika Waititi thing, I'm glad, and we were talking about this in our production chat. Yeah, I'm glad that he's going in a different direction. I think his joke was that he has no interest in going into who Chewbacca's grandmother or whatever. Interesting to him. It's not interesting to me either. I'm at this point done with the Skywalkers. The people that were super excited about Luke showing up at the end of The Mandalorian season 2, I was not one of those people. It was like, they could have used any other Jedi, because there are other Jedis that are alive. I don't need to see Luke show up everywhere. I don't. So
it's not that bad. It was not that bad. I disagree.
Yeah, I think people who love people. I know you guys love the original stuff.
I definitely was one of those like woo-woos, but I didn't necessarily think that was going to be its own storyline in Mandalorian kind of thing. And hopefully, because now, it's
episode 5, the return of the Mandalorian.
Keep doing that. I keep doing that. But yeah, I think hopefully they've strayed away from that now that Mando and Grogu are reunited, that we don't have to go down the Luke route again. It was cool to see that kind of full circle.
I think it was cool. I think it was cooler for me. And since they did it, and I knew they did it, it was cooler for me in Boba Fett than it was at the end of the
season 1.
Season 2. I think Mandalorian. Like I said, I was hoping like any other Jedi showed up. They did in Boba Fett. I knew what they did in Boba Fett. One last thing I would say is that, speaking to what you said, Pri, about simple storytelling, I feel like the storytelling was a little bit too simple. I feel like we've gotten more complexity in 2 episodes of Ms. Marvel than we have had in 5 episodes of the show. As you alluded to in our review of the first episode, talked about all kinds of things that are very complex world issues in the second episode of this show of Ms. Marvel, and they're not nearly as complex. It's more like if you're talking about a kid show, this is more of a kid show. It's more simplistic. I do like it more than the Boba Fett show. So it still ranks higher for me than the Boba Fett show, but I don't know that I like it better than either season of The Mandalorian for me.
Yeah. I'm not sure I would either, and the only reason I would is because I love Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan.
You like seeing lightsabers, and seeing lightsabers are cool, and you don't really get to see them that often in the Mandalorian show. But besides that, like the actual storytelling is what we're talking about.
For sure.
Any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap up?
I think we covered everything.
All right. In case we missed something, tell us down below. So comment down below and like and subscribe to get more content like this, and we will see you next time. All right, guys, for the final episode. All right, bye. Thanks.